Round after round after round, isn't it just exhausting when you go for job interviews and they go on and on and on, and you think to yourself, can't they just know whether they want to hire me or not after one round? So today I wanted to take a moment to go through the why companies are doing multiple rounds of interviews, and more importantly, what does that mean for you and how can you best approach it? Now, I'm stating the obvious that the hiring manager is looking to hire someone to join their team. What's less obvious is that if the role is a permanent role and you are perhaps not the right person that they've hired into that role, it can be quite difficult for them to either get you out of the business or to train you up and performance manage you. So instead, it's best to get the hiring process right from the start. But when you post an advert and you're getting 100 applications and you're going through CVs, you're shortlisting and you're maybe getting down to a list of 5 candidates that you want to interview, that's really only the first step. The second step, or the hardest step, is the interviews themselves. If you've ever run an interview, then you'll know firsthand that it's not that easy to choose someone to get the role after one interview. So multiple rounds has a few different benefits. One of the benefits is that you can really test out their skills, competencies, and abilities. The hiring manager and the recruiter have looked at the resume, they've got an idea about where the skills lie for this individual, but they haven't tested it. They haven't heard examples from you about where you've proven yourself to have done these things. And that's really, really important. And 1 hour for your first interview might not be enough of an opportunity for them to get engaged on how experienced you are in that topic or how much skill you have. So logically, multiple rounds means more chances that they can test you on these skills, competencies, and abilities. The second benefit for employees is that they get a chance to be able to do and check different things at multiple stages of the interview process. So, for example, the second round interview might be very focused on an assessment test or a scenario based question or a written test all in that interview. So, if you contrast that with the first round interview was likely getting to know and understand your background, understand and hear a bit about some of your key skills, key things that you can contribute, interest in the role, those type of things. But that second round is where you're really diving deeper into show your ability, show your capability. And that's really important for the employer. The third important point is that different panel members will be able to test this individual. They'll be able to test this candidate and bring differing points of views so that at the end of all the interviews, they can collate all of these opinions and ideas together. This is a really good way for the hiring manager to get an overall feel that they've made the right decision. Essentially, they want to be choosing someone that others in the group, others on that interview panel have also selected. The fourth point is consistency. There is proven research that when someone comes for the first round interview, they're able to explain themselves, answer some questions, give an idea about their skills and their abilities. But whether they can keep that up for multiple rounds of interviews and show their consistency is another thing altogether. It's not always that easy to be consistent, and the cracks in your abilities and your experience will start to show after multiple rounds of interviews. The more questions you're asked on the same topics will be almost a test of your consistency. Are your answers aligning? Are you showing examples where you've really done these things? Or are you just a lot of talk? Because sometimes in a first round interview, the hiring manager or those on the panel can be so wowed by the person, but not truthfully know if that person's suitable or not. Point number 5 is not my favorite one, but I've definitely heard it from hiring managers before, which is to test how much the candidate really wants the role. Sometimes people go to interviews, obviously because they want to get the role, but it's not because that role is exactly what they want, and instead it's just any job. They want to get any job at that point in time. And that's one of the pet peeves of hiring managers is when they find out that a candidate is just interviewing and just wanting the job because they want a job. It's quite a turn off for a hiring manager. They want to know that you really inside your heart really want this opportunity. As lame as that might sound, that is the reality. Everyone wants to be wanted, everyone wants to be liked, and it's no different in the interview setting as well. So, multiple rounds of interviews will show how much your commitment is to the process and to wanting to get this job. Point number 6, I touched on this a little bit before, but if the role is a permanent role, there is a lot of risk in that for employers. Hiring managers will have to live with the decision that they've made. If they hire someone who's incompetent, doesn't suit the role, doesn't fit the team, doesn't fit what the role actually needs, then that can be a really challenging situation for a hiring manager. They are legally bound to either end someone in their probation period or go through a number of steps in order to get someone's performance up to scratch. Failing that, it could end in them having to make someone redundant or fire them or whatever it might be. But but I guess the important point is that the hiring manager needs to live with this decision. And if you were in their shoes, wouldn't you also want to make sure that you've done the right steps and you've really made the right decision? Okay, so I was a bit over top there. I was really defending the employer and the hiring manager, but really I was trying to give you just some insight into the way that they're thinking and feeling, what's going on in their world that you might not see when you're a job seeker. When you're a candidate in the process, you don't always know what's going on over the fence. Do I necessarily agree with everything that I went through? No, I don't. I think the perfect amount of interviews is 2 formal interview rounds and 1 casual round. The casual round being that it might be a coffee meeting with a higher up person within that team, or it might be with even the colleagues that you'd be working with within that team. And it's a final kind of sense check, both for the candidate and those in the team, to get a good culture fit and know that they're going to work and get together well in the team. Any more than that, and I think it can become quite excessive. The only exception to this rule, I believe, is when you're dealing with a very high up managerial people leadership role or an executive role, which, for example, can go for multiple rounds across a very long period of time, sometimes 3 to 6 months in length to get through the whole interview process. But that world is quite different, and that's the way they're used to operating. But in general, 2 to 3 round interviews is the perfect optimal amount. So, what does this mean for you? I guess the first point I wanted to raise is that if an employer does offer you a job after the first interview, be wary, question it. Why are they making a decision so quickly? Have they really determined if I'm the suitable candidate, or are they just looking to plug a hole? What about myself? Do I really feel like I actually know enough about the team? Do I know enough about the role? Do I know about the vision of where the team is going and the role is going? This is different, of course, if it's a really short term temporary role. Say if it was a 3 month gig, then 1 round interview might be sufficient. But if I was going for a permanent role and there was only 1 round, I recommend if you're in that situation that you be a little bit wary. Question it. If I was you and you've gone through that 1 round interview and they've offered you the position, just be wary. There's no reason why you need to accept on the spot. It's perfectly fine for you to challenge them on that decision and go, thank you for the offer, but I would love an opportunity to meet with those in the team that I would be working with. Really feel like this would be a great way for me to get to know them and make sure that I am truly the best person for this position, and it's a great step for my career moving forward. I assure you, if you have a response like that, they will be blown away. They'll be happy to oblige in most cases. If they're not and they continue to push you, again, be wary. They might be just looking to plug a hole. The second point I want to make is commit to the process. As I mentioned, you might not always know what's going on the other side of the fence, and hopefully I've been able to give you some insight into understanding the feelings and thoughts and the process of those that are involved on the other side, so that you can be a little bit patient with the process and commit to the process. This is a great way to show your commitment to the opportunity and your interest in the role. And overall, it's also good practice just to go through the process. Unfortunately, the backside to this is that going through multiple rounds gets you more and more committed to the idea that you might be getting the role. So if at any point in the process you don't get the position, it can be heartbreaking. And so I do implore you, please protect yourself. look after yourself in those moments to try not to overthink why you weren't successful. Was it one step out of multiple rounds that you didn't do well? I assure you there's often more things behind the scenes that you don't see and don't hear about. Just use it as a learning opportunity and move on. Point number 3 is to use this as an opportunity to keep interviewing elsewhere. As a candidate, you are in the power position if you get multiple offers at the same time. I know that's crazy to hear from a recruiter, because we're obviously on the other side of the fence, and we're hoping that the role we have for you is the role that you want to take. But the reality is that only you know what role you want to take on and which company you want to join. And if that company really wants you, they may have to compete to get you across the line. And if you have multiple opportunities and multiple offers, that puts you in the power position to be able to negotiate. Now, be wary. Some things to consider is that if you play different employees against each other, sometimes you will overplay your hand and you'll find that that employer will actually back out and not want to proceed. But if you play it politely and use it as a bargaining tool, then it can be definitely used in your advantage. But overall, you should continue your interviews, because until you have received an offer from someone, you are just an interested candidate. They may say they really like you, they're really interested in you. That's great again. But until they verbally offer you and then follow that up with a written offer, you really should just continue on your job search. Point number 4 is to interview them. The more rounds of interviews that you have, you'll slightly find that you'll change your demeanor across the rounds. In the first round interview, you might be quite reserved and nice and polite. Second round interview, you might be opening up a little bit more, finding your feet, getting a little bit comfortable. Usually by the third or fourth round interview, you're feeling totally relaxed and at peace, and that's a great position to be. But make sure you use that time to not just be assessed by them, but to turn the table back on them and interview them. At the end of the day, you need to choose if you want to accept any offer that an employer gives you, and you want to make sure that you're taking the right steps that are going to benefit you in your career. So interview them, ask questions, find out more. And the funny thing is that the more that you interview them, funnily enough, the more they will be attracted to you for this opportunity as well, because they'll see how committed you are and interested in them that you are as well. So use that to your advantage as well. Use the time of multiple rounds to suss them out further. Point number 5, consider walking. You may have already done this in the past, or this might be an obvious one to you, but any job that you interview for, you have no obligation to keep going through the process if you're no longer interested. If there's other opportunities out there that have caught your attention, then that's perfectly fine. All I ask is that you do it respectfully, try not to burn bridges, and consider that it might be a company that you might want to work for in the future, or that hiring manager might move companies, that recruiter might stay in contact. You never quite know. Feel free to share feedback back to that organization as to how you feel about the multiple rounds of interviews. Again, you might want to do this respectfully, but this could be a great way for you to show your professionalism and show them that they're perhaps not doing the right process by holding 5-round interviews for this opportunity. This is a decision that you need to make, and you need to determine if these multiple rounds is enough of a reason for you to walk away. But I want to point out another point on this, which is that, multiple rounds can be a sign that that organization moves quite slowly in general. They may have a lot of red tape. They might have a lot of approvals that are required for certain processes. And that for you could be a bit of a turn off as well. You might not want to work somewhere where things move quite slowly and that there's so rigorous approvals around things. And that might be a blocker for you. So if you're seeing it in the interview process and you're not liking it, maybe that's a good sign for you to move on and look for a better opportunity. Really hope that helps you see both sides of the fence. And if you've been through a really lengthy process or just a really shitty interview process in general, would love to hear about it in the comments. If you have any questions at all, please do reach out. Happy hunting.